Hello again. Thanks so much for coming back. I hope you're enjoying Ms. Marvel as much as I am, which is a lot. Sadly, while the show is getting lots of glowing reviews, the view count for the first episode has been the lowest of any Disney Plus live action series for the MCU. Over the first 5 days, it clocked in at 775,000 views. Now, that's a big number, but its Wednesday counterpart, the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, had 6.2 million viewers, just over its first full day of availability. Granted, familiarity has a lot to do with that. The Obi-Wan Kenobi show is bringing back both a character and an actor who are familiar and much loved. And Ewan McGregor is doing a really good job. Looks to be enjoying himself. But Ms. Marvel is such a better show. So please, if you're watching this, tell your friends and colleagues to watch Ms. Marvel. Host a viewing party, because while viewership is actually high among young adults, which are its target demographic, you know who's not watching it as much? White millennials and Xers. That's us. So tell people to watch the show, because honestly, if they don't, they are the ones missing out. Really, you're doing them a favor. There's a lot that happens in this episode, but it's still highly character-driven. Kamala comes to school and she is absolutely riding high off of what happened over the weekend. I'm not sure that it says specifically, but it seems reasonable to me that the con would have been Friday through Sunday, and this would be the following Monday at school. Kamala breezes through the halls, deftly avoiding or even resolving some of the conflicts that we saw causing trouble for her in the first episode, even bumping into a cute boy. Is this some sort of wish fulfillment fantasy? A dream sequence from our creative, imaginative heroine? Nope. She's just got that much self-confidence, it seems. At lunch, Kamala and her friends Bruno and Nakia overhear Zoe Zimmer talking about how she was rescued at AvengerCon by, as Nakia snarkily comments, the budget Captain Marvel. Kamala, who is delighted to be compared to her hero, even not particularly favorably, begins to smile. But it is cut short, alas, when Zoe claims that the person who saved her is known as Nightlight, but she keeps a really low profile. And then she goes on to say that she's throwing a party on Friday to celebrate the fragility of life and her 500,000 followers. It just so happens that the same cute boy from earlier passes by Zoe in the cafeteria as she's announcing the party, and she says, "Aren't you that new senior? You should come." He fumbles a bit, but agrees, at which point Kamala does an about face and says they should go to the party. This gets her arched brows from Nakia and unsettled confusion from Bruno. Introducing and establishing Kamran is one of the main elements of this episode. At Zoe's party, he does a somersault off of the roof of a cabana into the pool, prompting a sigh of mashallah from Nakia and Kamala, which Nakia translates as, "Damn!" But in the Christian lexicon might better be translated this way.
Sweet baby Jesus and the grown one too.
Bruno, for some reason, is more critical, referring to the jump into the pool as a belly flop. As before, I want to comment on the interesting use of language here. This was not a belly flop. He did land face down, but he wasn't extended and prone and flat the way a belly flop would be. No. This is a deliberate choice on the part of the writers that shows us a lot about what they're trying to accomplish with Bruno. And for the character, it's also a deliberate choice. He is not at all happy about Kamran. When the cops show up to bust the party, Kamran gives Kamala and her friends a ride home. There's a nice little back and forth where Kamala coos over Kamran's car, actually an uncle's. Kamran offers to let her drive it. Bruno points out that Kamala flunked her driver's test, and Kamran responds by offering to give her driving lessons. Smooth. Another significant part is the introduction of a storyline in which Kamala encourages Nakia to run for the mosque board. It's not clear if this is some kind of council of members who run just their mosque, or if this is a community group in which each mosque chooses a representative. We also have a montage sequence in which Bruno helps Kamala practice using her powers. It turns out that she's wearing the bangle pretty much all the time. This also has other consequences as it starts acting up one day at school. She rushes to hide in the bathroom. Nakia comes along to make sure she's okay, and Kamala deliberates about whether or not to tell her about what's been going on. But somebody else comes in, and the moment is lost. This gets repeated a couple of different times. Bruno gets called to the guidance counselor's office. It turns out he's gotten a scholarship to a 10-day semester-long immersion program at Caltech. We have a little bit of indication that he's not super well off because he does talk about the expense, and the counselor informs him that it's a full ride, everything's covered. But for some reason, this doesn't make Bruno jump for joy. We also meet Amir's fiancée, Taisha, when the two of them happen across Kamala and Kamran at a diner they're hanging out at after Kamran has given Kamala a driving lesson. Kamran passes himself off as a cousin, and it looks like Amir buys it, but Taisha is not convinced. She lets it slide, though, and that tells us something about the kind of person that she is, as well as her relationship with Amir and the family. She's a newcomer. She's kind of playing nice. Later at a family dinner, Yusuf tells her some of the family history, including a story about Muniba's mother, Sana, as a child, following a trail of stars when she was separated from her father. At the celebration for Eid, which is probably Eid al-Fitr, as it's happening during the school year, I apologize if I butchered that pronunciation. I did look it up. I'm doing my best, I promise. Anyway, Nakia hands out posters for her board campaign. She also gives stacks of posters to Bruno and Kamala to pass out as well. Kamala targets some of her mother's friends, as she wants to ask them about her great-grandmother. Nakia, on the other hand, targets Kamala's father. His best friend will be running against her. She reminds him that his daughter's best friend is also running. It's a great scene, and again, Mohan Kapoor is absolutely delightful to watch as he tries to figure out how he's gotten into such a pickle. It's beautiful. From there, we cut to a bleak room. It turns out that the post-credits scene with agents from the Department of Damage Control deciding to bring her in referred not to Kamala, but to Zoe. This was a nice red herring. I'd been wondering how they'd figured out who the new super was already. As in my opinion, bring her in doesn't mean begin a search, but rather that you already know how to find this person and just pick him up. Zoe's obliviousness is reinforced nicely. First with wondering whether she's been brought to a secure facility because her party was too loud, and then also seeming to believe that the agent who sings her the little popcorn ditty is sincerely a big fan. He shifts quickly to asking her about the enhanced individual, and another agent comes in as the bad cop and they interrogate her about her interaction. Jumping immediately to, does she have an accent, and is she Latina, Middle Eastern, South Asian? Zoe's hesitation over South Asian makes me wonder if we're supposed to think that she actually did recognize Kamala, but that doesn't make sense. There's no way she wouldn't have buddied up to Kamala if she'd known. And when she was telling her hangers-on about being the damsel, she didn't so much as glance at Kamala across the cafeteria. But at the same time, it's difficult to believe that a thoughtless, popularity-focused white girl from Jersey City would know the difference between Latina, Middle Eastern, and South Asian from a brief interaction, even if the other girl wasn't in costume at all.
Why are you brown?
Cutting back to the Eid celebration, a boy has climbed to the top of the mosque to take selfies. He loses his balance and ends up clinging to the tower and calling for help. Kamala somehow is able to dash off, change into her Ms. Marvel costume, and get back in an amazingly brief time. Okay, fine. The rescue attempt is a nice payoff from the earlier montage. Kamala uses the skills she practiced, but the stakes are much higher this time. The rescue is a qualified success, as before Kamala can get the boy completely to safety, her bangle starts acting up again, and she has a vision of a woman reaching for her. The boy falls, and while she tries to catch him, she only succeeds in slowing him down. He lands on top of a car parked by the mosque with a disconcertingly loud crunch, and we hear him moan, "My ankle." All of this has gotten the attention of Damage Control. Just after Kamala sneaks away from the mosque and makes her way back down to street level, she's spotted by a drone, like the ones in Spider-Man No Way Home. This, and the use of one of the agents from that movie, help to reinforce the show's continuity. Kamala runs, but other drones join the chase, and Damage Control vans and agents show up at the end of the alley, cutting her off. Kamala uses her powers to fend off a couple of the drones and get past the vans, but is hit by a blast from one of the agent's weapons and falls to the ground. A car screeches to a stop beside her, and the door is thrown open. Kamran shouts, "Get in!" And as soon as she does, he peels out. Neither she nor the audience is given any explanation for how he got there. Instead, someone in the back seat says her name. She turns around, and there's the woman from her vision, who says, "I've waited a long time to meet you." Kamran then introduces her as his mother. Shot from Kamala. Cut to credits. Thematically, I think this episode kind of explores the effects and influence of social media. Agent Cleary accuses Zoe of setting up the situation at AvengerCon for the likes, and when Kamala shows up to rescue the kid, many of the people gathered below whip out their phones. I like that it's not just mindlessly critical. Zoe didn't put people in danger to increase her follower count. And the crowd at the mosque isn't simply recording. You hear a shout for someone to call 911, and minutes later there are lights and sirens. It's kind of a commentary on how innate the urge seems to be to indicate our presence, to record things that are going on around us. It's very much like journaling, keeping diaries, writing letters. There is a sense in which it seems to be innately human to say, I was here, I saw this happened, and to preserve some kind of record. We've seen it throughout history. And some of the pushback against the use of cell phones and other ways of recording to make our mark, to indicate our presence, to remember, it seems to be a reaction to not what actually is being done, not what people are doing in that attempt to record their presence, but just a different way of doing it. That's the only change. The process is different, but the action is inherently the same. There are also a lot of Easter eggs. For example, the episode title, Crushed, is the same as the title of the third Miss Marvel collection from the comics, and that's the one that has Cameron introduced as well. However, I want to emphasize that while there are some similarities, this is not just a live-action version of the comic book.
And that's all I have to say about that.
So yeah, this episode is chock full of small new developments and not a lot of resolution. There's a lot to explore and ponder and reflect on. It moves smoothly between its plot lines, and while it's again character-focused and there's almost no fighty, it doesn't drag at all. Maybe that's why the series hasn't really gained traction? It doesn't feature fistfights, guns, and explosions, but for me, that's one of its strengths. Like, we're only 2 episodes in. The title character is not going to fall and die. But the random kid she's trying to save? Probably not. It's a kid after all, you sadists, but without plot armor, can we really be sure? So I find it a lot more interesting than a fight with a villain where you know the outcome. In this case, the outcome is less certain, and that pulls me in more. The 3rd episode is already out, so now that I've gotten this taken care of, I am finally going to get to go and watch that. Hopefully, I can start getting caught up, and I can post the review for that one before the 4th episode goes up. Wish me luck. Oh, and don't forget, leave me a comment. Bye for now, everybody. Thank you so much for watching.